Today is May 2nd. Welcome to the West Bridgewater Board of Selectmen's meeting. Just so you are aware that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be shown on the internet and local access television. If you'd please stand and join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first on the agenda, we have Scott Golder to discuss bonds.
Thank you, Chairman. Last year, we took out $4.5 million to buy the golf course. There wasn't enough time to bond the money last year, so we had to do a short-term note that is due on June 1st. So we had to make a decision on how to pay for it. We went out to the bond market because the interest rates have been creeping up over the last year, and they seem like they're probably headed that way in the future. We had 3 bids come in. The winner was Robert W. Baird and Company at a true interest cost of 4.208. Maintained our Standard & Poor's rating of AA. And
What were you borrowing for before? The interest rate?
it was a short-term note, so
Around 2,
it was under 2 last year, but the short,
and were we up to 4.5 now?
yeah, because it's a 30-year note,
Wow,
so.
it's quite an increase.
Excuse me, can we turn that off?
Sure.
I can't hear.
The short-term interest rates are a lot lower because they know they're not volatile.
Okay.
And yeah, we were expecting about 5%, and we got down to 4.2. So in that realm, that seemed pretty good for us. If there's no other questions,
I don't have any. Does anyone else?
there's more information coming. So we have to sign each note, and then you have to vote on it. You have a copy of the vote, but I can give you the synopsis of it because it's mostly legalese. The vote will confirm the sale of bonds to Robert W. Baird at the presented interest rates, and that the term bonds will mature on said dates, and that we prepared and distributed a notice of sale and official statements, and will follow the terms of the official statement, and that we continue our annual disclosure statements, which is just letting the lending companies know where we are every year with the audits and that.
Okay, is there a motion to that effect?
So what I would ask is page 4, 5, and 6 is the actual full motion. It's 3 pages. So rather than read it, all I would ask is that you would take a motion to vote on what you have been presented, or a motion as presented, and then that will carry the vote.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now we have to sign them all.
Hi, how are you?
If you just want to make a little pile.
Okay.
Double check them all after. next one is a statement saying that we signed the bonds and there's no looming litigation or financial interest in the relationship with the purchaser. And then it's just four-
You want a motion to that effect, too?
Nope. Yes,
Okay.
It's just 4 copies of this.
I don't sign the bottom.
When you sign these, Denise asked a question. She sometimes signs with blue ink. Do we want to sign some of these things with black ink or what?
I don't think it matters.
Well, it doesn't really matter, but
No, we
it
have,
doesn't matter of choice, right?
there's a couple documents, I believe from the police department, that have to be in blue.
Yeah, right.
Other than that, it doesn't matter.
It used to be that they only accepted black ink, but as far as I know, about 10 years ago, it didn't matter.
This is the continuing disclosure certificate, just saying that we'll continue to file annual disclosure. And if we don't, there's a back form that I have to send in saying why we didn't do it.
You're a pretty busy fellow, you know that?
Yeah, these bonds are a lot of work.
That was the first time around.
This was the second.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I did
He's
one
been
like
there
the
before.
first month I came in.
Oh,
That
okay.
was a little intense. This made a lot more sense. This one's gonna be just for you.
Just for me, because why?
You're the clerk. And it just says, it's just a copy of the vote saying that we voted and it was on the agenda.
How come this says the interest rate's 5%?
So each bond that you signed is its own entity. So the first 9 years or 10 years are 5%, and then it goes down to 4 over here, and then 4.25 for the last 10 years. So the way they determine the best offer is by combining all the interest rates and figuring out what the true interest cost is.
Okay. So over the life of it, that's where you came out with the 4.2?
Yep. It's very complicated if you want to see the formula sometime.
Is this my copy, or you?
Nope, I need 4 copies of it, sorry.
Okay.
You do have a copy in your packet. That's the last one. One more for you.
Oh, thank you.
I think I have a question of David.
Sure, let's just,
For you, when you get through.
yeah, let's just let Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All set?
All set.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank
you.
David, with the interest rate going up, okay, like it was just explained by Mr. Golder, now where are we as far as the payment there? I mean, are we still making, the payments, it's paying the golf course off, so there's no problem there? So that's
Absolutely.
figured into the,
Yes.
okay.
Okay, moving on. Accept review the minutes of April 4th, April 18th, and April 23rd.
I'd like to make a motion to that effect, to approve the minutes.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, approved meeting minutes of March 7th and March 21st. Is there a motion?
I wasn't here for those minutes, so I don't think I can.
I'll make a
Oh,
mo-
you're right.
All right, I'll make a motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Proclamation for Race Amity Day, June 10th, 2018. David, is this anything other than approving the proclamation?
Yep, the proclamation that you have before you is the one that the governor signed into law last year. So really, all that we're looking for is for you to take a vote to declare June 10th, 2018 as Race Amity Day in the town of West Bridgewater. You'll recall that the town partnered with the Lions Association. The governor was requesting some sign of diversity, and that you will have multicolor chairs at the center of town come this summer that will tie into this day for Race Amity Day. So really, all we're looking for is just a vote to publicly declare that day as Race Amity Day.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion?
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have a number of resignations. First, Thomas Fiorentino from the Municipal Building Needs Committee. Has he actually submitted a letter of resignation? Okay. Is there a motion to accept Mr. Fiorentino's resignation and send him a letter of thanks?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Then there are three other resignations. Lynn Sanitago-Collins from the Cultural Council, Steve Hobbs from Streetlight Committee, and Joseph Souza, Fence Viewer. And David, those three have all submitted letters of resignation?
Actually, no. What happened was that we have not heard from them. They have not been sworn in. They have been non-compliant with their board. About 3 meetings ago, actually about 4 meetings ago, you asked me to send a memo out to all three of them, asking them to respond. If they didn't respond, the board would then accept them as being resigned, and they did not respond to the letters.
Okay. So is there a motion to, I guess, accept their resignation in lieu of a response?
Exactly.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, up next, we have the articles to be placed on the warrant for annual town meeting. This is not a vote on whether or not we recommend them to the town, it's just to place them on the warrant. I believe that all of us have had a chance to review them, so we can either go through them one by one, skip to the ones we have questions on, make a motion to approve them now, or are there any suggestions?
I think we should go down one by one, won't take that long.
You want to go through all of them?
Yeah.
David?
Sure, so Article 1 this year unfortunately is placed on there for the obvious reasons. We are going to have to elect a moderator. I'm going to go over the process under my town meeting, under my report. Article 2 is a consent article along with Article 3. Article 4, we normally place into our special, which is to cover our snow and ice, but there's no legal requirement to have 2 meetings. And since we would have to elect a moderator 2 times, I thought that it would be more productive if we include it in the annual town meeting. So that is to cover our current snow and ice deficit, which is about $175,000 to $180,000. Article 5 is to determine your salaries for the elected positions and then the ones that serve without pay. Again, same article on an annual basis. Article 6 will actually be a budget, which you've already approved and voted on. Article 7 is in reference to the assessors into what the exemptions would be. Again, it's a reoccurring article. Selectman Ray's had a couple of grammatical changes that you want to make. We have sent the information back over to the assessor. My understanding is they made a couple of other tweaks to the language as well. So again, all I'm going to ask at the end is that we have town council review it, and whatever language they recommend is what we would go with.
David, do we typically increase 25%?
Yeah, that's
It
on
has
an-
been?
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the same on an annual basis. Article 8 is, we receive Chapter 90 funds. It's just an authorization from the town. It shows as a borrowing article, but that's only because sometimes we go out in July to start doing the work, but the money comes in November. So we actually borrow the money and then pay it off as soon as the money comes in. Article 29 is a reoccurring article that allows residents in town to be able to borrow at almost a 0%. I think it's 1 or 2% if they have a septic issue through the Board of Health. Article 10 is in reference to your CPC articles. Article 10 is basically the upfront article as to how much monies are not being spent in their respective buckets. Article 11 is $125,000 to be spent at War Memorial Park to continue that project. Article 12 is $25,000 to be spent at War Memorial Park for the fish passage. Selectman Reyes had made some comments on it, but we've discussed it today, and she understands why the original comments were actually accurate, so I think those comments are no longer valid, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
It was the numbers, I didn't understand where they were coming from and why certain wording was used, and David explained it to me.
Okay.
Article 13 is to provide $20,000 to the Old Bridgewater Historical Commission. Again, Selectman Reyes included the word together. My thinking is that for a total sum is a legalistic clause, but again, we'll refer to town council as he reviews it. Article 14 is in $15,000 for the town clerk to continue their preservation. And Article 15 is $10,000 for the assessors, for them to continue their evaluation as well. Article 16 is a reoccurring article. We put $100,000 towards our OPEB liability. Article 17 goes for our joint web task force, which is West Bridgewater, East Bridgewater, and Bridgewater, for police action in reference to drug enforcement. Article 18 is start of your capital budgets. Article 18 is to purchase a vehicle for, a cruiser for the police department. You will see the capital budget has recommended free cash. Since I have been here, we have always used free cash to be able to purchase our capital budget items. However, Selectman Reyes had a question as to why it should be a borrowing article. So I think that might be an appropriate time to have that conversation, because I need to know whether we're going to disclose it as a free cash article or a borrowing article.
What I think about that, I think that if we have the cash, why pay interest? If we have the money, pay it, and why borrow? We were borrowing in police cruisers and everything else, and I don't think that's the right way to go. My opinion is we stay what we're doing and don't borrow on something like that. Police cruisers, which, if we have the money, pay it, okay? There's interest involved in that, and why should we pay interest? That's where I stand with that.
So my question is, what is our goal to have in the stabilization fund, and how much do we have right now?
So currently, our stabilization fund is $2.8 million, and we will not have the ability to be able to add to that stabilization because we're using our free cash to pay down the debt, and we will also be using it to pay for our capital budget items. Department of Revenue says best practice is to have 10% of your operating budget. Our operating budget is around $31 million. It'll be increased to about $33 million, assuming passage this year. Actually, no, that includes water, so say $31 million. So best practices would be $3.1 million. 5 years ago when I came here, I noticed you had an issue because you only had $11,000 in the bank.
That's right.
So we have, I think over 5 years, we've done a really good job of racing to that number. But, at this point, we're at 2.8 million, so we're just shy of that 10% goal.
So that's part of why I'm leaning towards debt financing versus using our cash. If we're trying to reach an optimum level of having 10% of our operating budget in the stabilization fund, if we continue to use this cash versus debt financing, we're doing two things. We're working against ourselves and not reaching our goal for the stabilization fund, plus we're not spreading the expenses over 5 years. So the impact on the taxpayer is harder.
So if we were to borrow the money, so we'd have to borrow roughly $30,000, we'd then have to tax for that $30,000, where if we paid for it with free cash, we've already taxed. It's being paid with money that's already been paid in taxes. So we'd have to add $30,000 to our levy for next year. So we'd have to increase taxes by that much more. And I think right now we're at a point where 2.8 million, 3.1, where we're close enough where we don't want to pay for the financing, and we don't want to raise taxes anymore to get to where we should be in stabilization, because we're pretty close right now. So I think we need to maintain the 2.8 and increase it slowly, but I don't think there's that rapid movement anymore that we need.
Do we have any other large items to pay for out of that 2.8 million?
As of right now, no.
Paid for the
but-
trucks?
Yeah, the trucks were paid cash, so we don't have that as a looming expense. You know, I am unaware of anything at this point, but, you know, tomorrow could be different, but I don't know of anything at this point.
So I suppose if our intention is not to have any free cash next year to add to the stabilization fund, what you said makes sense.
Well, I am hoping that we continue to generate free cash in the future. I think this year, because we purchased 2 large trucks. That was $400,000, hopefully an anomaly. So if we had not had such a large purchase, we would be putting additional monies towards stabilization. As long as we continue to have growth and the economy remains good and we continue to be careful about how we budget, which we've all been doing, we have continued to generate $1.1 million or so of free cash every single year the last handful of years. I would hope that we'll continue to do that going forward. One day we won't be able to. There's no
Right,
doubt.
but I really don't like the term free cash because it's not free. No one's printing any cash to give to us. So again, I go back to my original concern. The only way to raise free cash is from taxpayer revenue, any money we get from the state or any other resources, but taxpayer revenue
Yep.
is part of it. And if we continue to use the free cash, or let's just call it cash, we're eventually going to get to a point where we want to replenish that. And either way, the money's coming from the taxpayer. Whether we try to replenish free cash or we pay it out of this year's free cash. And I'm just bringing it to your attention. If we use it for capital assets that have a lifespan of, let's call it 5 or 6 years, I understand we'll pay interest, so we will pay a little more money, but the impact on the taxpayer of paying it over 5 years is less than or softer than taking it out of free cash and then trying to replenish that in 1 year.
I don't think, well, no, because we can't tax we can't just add to the levy to say we want to add free cash. Free cash is kind of unexpected. So we'd kind of be doing the opposite. We'd be increasing next year's taxes less by using free cash now.
It can't be that unexpected to end up with 2.9 million in 4 years.
It's also growth, not unexpected growth as well, so new buildings.
But we must be able to forecast, we must be able to forecast that a year or two in advance. It has to go through the whole building process, planning board, and all of that. So again, I go back to, it can't be that unexpected.
We could probably forecast for it, but my understanding is we couldn't raise the levy based on anticipated growth.
No, you don't raise the levy, but what you do is that normally I budget $250,000 or so of new growth on an annual basis. So that gets factored into the levy. If we get $400,000 of new growth that gets certified in August, September, then that's $150,000 that then falls to the bottom line. But it would be difficult for us to know in advance as to how it would be unless we just had somebody there all day long just doing budget analysis, which we don't have a budget analyst. So, and it doesn't mean it would be entirely accurate. But in any event, I think, however the board wants to do it is fine. I apologize for the term of free cash. It's not my term. It's a legalistic term. And that's exactly what the form is that comes from the Department of Revenue. It's called free cash. So the money comes in. We could put it in the bank, and we could borrow going forward. That money, as the chairman said, it's money that's already been taxed. So if we put it in the bank and then we want to spend $30,000 in something, you are now going to have to raise or tax an additional $30,000 to do that. So that's why if we put it in the bank, if we pay cash for it, we don't have to tax anybody one more penny in order to purchase that vehicle. Now, the negative to that is that we're not adding money to stabilization this year. But I will say this town went years with $11,000 in its bank account and figured it out. Now we have $2.8 million. Doesn't mean that we should stop there. We should still continue going forward. But because we have growth, because we are not in a recessionary period of time, we probably don't have any pressures on that stabilization in the short term. I think that money will probably go untouched. And hopefully next year, without large purchases, we will be able to still pay cash for our capital budget items and on top of that, add money to stabilization. And I would also let you know that 5 years ago, when I came here, your bond rating was A minus. It is now AA. And part of that is twofold. You are well below your levy capacity, because we haven't taxed at 2.5% in those 5 years. And second, as I said earlier, you went from $11,000 in the bank to $2.8 million in the bank. So by lowering our debt load and putting money in the bank, it's vastly increased our bond rating. So, and the board can do whatever it wants, but I do think it's prudent policy that if you have the money, to use it, to spend it, as opposed to incurring additional costs with interest.
I'd just like to make one point, and then we can move on. And I do remember the days when we had $11,000 in the stabilization fund, but our taxes were also a lot lower for the residents. Point one. Point two, I've only been doing this, a month and a half? And if the capital needs committee or capital, what's the name of this?
Capital Budget Committee.
Thank you. Capital Budget Committee has made this recommendation. I'm sure they've put a lot of thought into it, so I'm prepared to move on.
Okay.
Well, it's like I said, I mean, this is a small amount to borrow, but we're going to continue to borrow, and then the levy limit is going to have to be increased, and then we're going to have to put the levy up, and it's going to cost the taxpayers more money. I think we should leave it alone, pay our cash, and do what we're doing right now. Then we can look at it next year and see where we are, you know?
I'll have a lot more time to look at this more thoroughly.
Yeah, I mean,
You
we're
already told me
not,
that once.
we're not decreasing stabilization, so I think we're still in a healthy position.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Go
No,
ahead,
that's
David.
okay. So Article 19, again, is a cash article to purchase a K-9 vehicle for the police department. Article 20 is to purchase a stainless steel sander for $18,000. Again, Selectman Reyes moved some of the language. I have no problem with that. Article 21 is to purchase a new 10-foot dump body for DPW, utilizing, again, cash. Article 22 is to purchase a Bobcat planer, which will help us in our roads for when we go out to pave. That we'll be paying cash with that. And then our overhead garage doors, I believe there was a 9 total for $55,000. That would be paid cash as well. Article 24 would be go to the fire department. That is to bring them up to latest regulation for their personal protective clothing. And Article 25 would go to the fire department for a new forest fire skid plate as well. Article 26 is a fund that the Board of Selectmen voted months ago to start a sidewalk fund. So we placed $100,000 into that. And I don't know if Selectman Reyes, if you had a comment, I don't know if you want to speak to that or if you want me to move on.
Only to the point that my comment regarding which sidewalks, and is this subject to any possible reimbursement from the state? That was my question. I didn't know
Okay.
what the
Yeah.
priority was, if there was a priority. And David explained to me, this really isn't going to go towards fixing or repairing any sidewalks necessarily immediately. It would be an accrual to start, because $100,000 is not going to.
So nothing's
Yeah.
We realize
outlined.
that, but it's where I stand with the Mass Highway and everything else, like the lights at East Street, where we're moving forward there. If we show earnest effort to move on something, and then we can probably get some reimbursement from the state, and we just sit here. But I'm with you when you say, which ones are we should come up with definitely where we want those sidewalks to go. And, you know, that should be discussed, you know, where this money is gonna be spent and what sidewalks are gonna be done. I know that's not gonna cover the sidewalks, that's just to get the thing started.
And,
We've established a committee to start looking into the sidewalks.
and as you can see, the way the language is written is that this article will be under the control of the Board of Selectmen, so you'll ultimately control the use of the funds. Article 27, we do this every couple of years. We place money into the Municipal Building Needs Fund, so that way if we have an emergency in any of our buildings, that's $30,000. Article 28 is in reference to the East Street, East Center Street traffic light. You'll see it's $513,000. When I was here 2 weeks ago, I had ballparked it at $450 because I had said that the numbers were just coming in. We had just had a bid opening, so I didn't have all the numbers. We were hoping for around $450. The actual number came in at $471, And then after speaking to our engineering consultant, which is Jim Noyes, he said that we need to budget a 10% contingency in case you run into any issues or problems. So that's why it's $513,000.
See, what we're looking here, when we started this, it was around 300,000, and the longer we wait on something, the more expensive it is. And we're having a problem on that committee I have, because we can't get, the whole projects done. So I suggested, well, why don't we give something, or start something, but to sit up there when I go to the meetings and not do anything, But this is an example of, now, that's a lot of money for light, but hey, that's what the price is today.
Yeah, so Selectman Murray, you're absolutely correct. It was inexpensive. We were continuously waiting on the state to come in with funds. They didn't, and so now we're going to try to move forward. However, I will say that we have continued to lobby our state delegation to try to get the funds as an earmark instead of waiting to go through the Mass DOT process, which just takes years.
Maybe through the Senate, maybe the bond bill, I don't know, we haven't talked to the new senator, and maybe we can get some of this money from there,
Article 29 is in reference to the Howard School. I have split it up between $75,000 free cash and $75,000 borrow. However, please keep in mind that we have applied to the MSBA for what they refer to as an accelerated repair program. And the anticipation is that they would pay 52%. So they would be paying the amount that we would be borrowing, and we would be paying the difference, which is the free cash. They have come out to the facility. They're in the process of voting on it. With any luck, we will have an answer by town meeting. If we don't, we just have to, by law, have a appropriation for the full amount, so that when they do reimburse us, we only have to pay out the $75,000 in free cash. Article 30 is the warrant article in reference to a school resource officer. What I will say is that the police chief and I have discussed this. We want to get a more fine-tuned number. So right now it's showing 75,000, but when we actually go to print, I will have a more accurate number as to exactly what that will cost for a new police officer, plus equipment, plus benefits. Article 31 is in reference to a general bylaw in reference to the Finance Committee. This process started many months ago in my conversations with the town moderator. Unfortunately, as we know, what happened, and also having a conversation today with the chairman of the Finance Committee, who is still in support of making changes. However, given the timing, I would recommend to the board that we actually rescind this article and not place it on the warrant. The next article, 32, is in reference to animal control. That is a request from the town clerk. I can't tell you I really understand it enough, but she's an elected person. She says that this is something that we should do in order to be consistent with general laws. She's really good, so I just trust her. Oh, go right ahead.
One comment. So I did speak with Ann today, and she said this portion of the law had been repealed, so that it's just making the bylaw consistent.
Article 33, as you know, when we purchased the golf course, we created a revolving fund. There is now a new state law as to how we have to show revolving funds. You may recall that the first 9 or 10 articles in our warrant used to be revolving funds, and we would handle them as a consent article. We no longer have to do it on an annual basis. You will see that at the end, because we will have one chart that will now have all of them, and I believe that means we don't have to do it every single year. Is that correct? So we'll only establish it this time. However, because the golf course was established using a bylaw, we have to amend the bylaw and keep it where it's the upper amount for the revolving account is $400,000. That's already been approved in the past. We're just establishing it in the bylaw, so we do not have to do it on an annual basis.
Excuse me, David, can
Yep.
I just ask a question? So we have not spent any of the $400,000?
That is correct.
And has the management fee we've been collecting paid all of the expenses of the golf course? Have we had to use any town money in any way?
No. And I will add, they've been extremely punctual with their checks. They walk in the office and hand it to me on the first of every quarter. They've been very, very good. Article 34 is a vote to ban non-medical marijuana establishments. You'll recall that we just did an advisory opinion. Based on that advisory opinion, I assumed 34 would pass. However, in case 34 does not pass, then that means that you have the ability to be able to impose an excise tax of 3%, so that is Article 35. If Article 36 is to zone for it, and the zoning that we recommended after consultation with Hugh Hurley, Chairman of the Planning Board, was to incorporate the medical marijuana bylaws so it would mirror each other. And I believe that Selectman Ray's had a couple of comments about that.
I did, and I suggested some stronger language, only because if this does go through, this language was built around medical marijuana facility, and I think if it's any other type of facility, then the zoning bylaws should be stronger. So for example, and these pages aren't numbered, 7.9.5.1, there is language further down that talks about the building being alarmed and secured. I put it up there, but David pointed out there was language further down in another section. We talked about hours of operation. This says 8 p.m., between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., it would be closed, plus closed on Sundays, but from talking with David, that this was actually going to be changed because they can be open on Sundays.
That's correct. My conversation with the chairman stated that he thought that it would be Monday through Sunday. So, again, that's correct.
So I thought that the hours should be limited even more so that they could not open before 10 a.m., but there were some issues with that. 7.9.5.7 talked about shopping centers, shopping plazas and malls. I thought we should add in recreational establishment and/or restaurant. In other words, no marijuana in any of those types of buildings. 7.9.5.9 talks about the distance from a residential zoning district or a public school, etc. It's all at 500 feet. I thought it should be 1,000 feet.
Why 1,000?
Again, it's not medicinal marijuana. This could be any of those other categories. And if it was to go through, I don't think we should have any type of retail marijuana facility within 500 feet of a home or a school.
I think you mean 1,000.
Well, the way it stands right now is 500. I don't
Correct.
think it
Yep.
should be 500.
Oh, I
I
see
think
what
it
you're
should be
saying.
even further away. So I was suggesting 1,000 feet. And one thing for medicinal, but for any other type of marijuana facility, I don't think it should be 500 feet from a home. 1,000 feet for a school, I would suggest even further, but I don't think that would fly. Section F said RMD. I didn't know what that was, but I believe that's a typo.
Correct.
Another question I asked is why we were excluding a marijuana research facility, but yet including a cultivation. If this does go through and we allow cultivation, processing, retail, or distribution, why wouldn't we also include research facility? My thought was a research facility is probably the less harmful of all of them for the community. And I'm thinking along the lines of the types of employees you would see at a research facility were likely scientists.
So does this article specifically exclude research facility
It
anywhere?
only includes cultivation. It says that a special permit would be issued for cultivation of marijuana for recreational use, processing and packaging for recreational use, retail sale or distribution.
Okay, I
So
don't disagree with you.
That. Excuse me. 7.9.6.3, I suggested in not only the name and address of each owner, but also telephone number and email address. Let's see. Section C, I recommended a copy of the entire deed, and that goes along with entire deed, lease, purchase, sale agreement, just so we can verify that there's no assignment rights included. Section D, because we have so many complicated organizational structures, and sometimes you can't seem to get down to a real person in a corporation or an LLC, because the member might be another LLC and such, I suggested they include a copy of the articles of organization or corporate charter. And again, once you do get down to a particular individual, have not only that individual's name, but also their address, telephone number, and email address. I didn't go through all of the planning board's part of it or zoning board's part of it, because I thought they're probably better educated to deal with that and understand it than I am. 35B, I believe it is, starts with pursuant to MGL Chapter 94G. That was just a very difficult paragraph to read. So the modification I made, I just thought it read better and made more sense. So it's 7, right after the page that
Yep.
ends with 7.
Yeah, I found
Okay.
it, thank you.
I think it says the same thing, just with maybe 10 fewer words. Article 37, Section 1. I was talking with David, I added in by right, just to cover any excluded person we may, or party we may not have included, someone who might have a right to be on a property.
So if I may, before we go forward, Article 35 is a zoning bylaw. So before we skip to the other ones, and the reason I'm interjecting is this. The planning board bylaw, whenever there is a new zoning requirement, they are required to hold a public hearing. They have now posted for that for Wednesday, May 23rd. So this zoning bylaw is actually being proposed by the planning board. So what I suggested to Selectman Reyes is that we take her recommendations, and if the board is so inclined, is that we would then write a memo, as we do under site plan review, and we would forward those comments, that these are the comments from the Board of Selectmen, to please review this and incorporate these changes. If there are some changes that you would like to incorporate, let me know which ones they are. If you don't want to incorporate any of them, then Selectman Reyes can obviously bring it as an individual. But as a board, if you would like to incorporate some or all, if you would advise us, and then we will write the letter and make sure the planning board has it, so they could take it under advisement as part of their hearing.
And that would also all be subject to town council review?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, okay, I think that makes sense. So, why don't we come back to it at the end and determine what recommendations exactly we want to make to the planning board after we vote on putting all the articles on the warrant?
Well, I know the other night, we had the commissioners, the two commissioners, and they really didn't have the answers to a lot of David's questions and what I asked, and of course, everybody says this is, if we don't vote for it, it's all around us, we're not gonna make any money. I asked a direct question of David. And David, I think you did say to me that we're gonna realize around $35,000 or something like that.
What I was suggesting is that for every $1 million in sales, the most you're going to bring in is $30,000. And
Right. So,
And so $30,000 is certainly not going to hire another police officer, and whether or not they'll have $1 million in sales. So if they have
Right.
$500,000, you're talking 15 grand.
yeah, so there's where you are. So it wouldn't be an establishment of making more money if it did come in, I mean, those questions have gone out, and it's not an official question, we're gonna have to take an official vote there, whether they have it or not, and that's gonna come at a later date, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Moving on.
So the next one is a general bylaw. This actually came from the police department. I've also done my homework and research on it, is right. This is to make sure that regardless of whether or not we allow retail in town or any other version of that, is that people do not have the right to be able to ingest it at any level or consume it in any public places in town. Again, Selectman Ray's made a minor tweak to it. Town council will review it. I will tell you, in municipal government, thievery is well established. So all I do is I stole this from another town, and Mass Chief stole it from their legal counsel. So most likely, the language as originally presented is probably what will survive, but I just want to inform the board.
Okay.
The next one is in reference to revolving funds. Earlier, as I stated, we used to do it all as individual bylaws. We no longer have to do that. We can create this one chart. So we will not have to, on an annual basis, have to do it. And again, the only reason the golf course is not in this one is because we had already created the bylaw, or else it would be in here as well. The next one is in reference to Chapter 40, municipal charges for lien statute. This is from the Conservation Commission. What they are stating is that if somebody's in violation of the new EPA stormwater regulations, is that they want to have the authority to be able to impose a lien. The next article, again, is from the police department, is to create a separate account that when one of our police or firefighters are injured on duty, as we get reimbursed for that amount of money, that it actually goes into account that they can continue to pay the officer rather than take it out of their local budget. And the last article is from the planning board. It would be to accept Woodrow Lane as a public road.
David, you have 39 and 40 on here with hold next to them.
Yeah, those are, there's nothing there.
Okay.
They were placeholders that have no place.
I did put question marks after Article 41,
Yes.
because when I read this, I was a little unclear who we were talking about leaning real property, and whether or not this would include residential. I don't know whose job it is to maintain these stormwater management systems, but is it possible any of these are located on residential property? And that's not the resident's responsibility to maintain it. But if it's not maintained, and then there is an issue, a resident shouldn't be responsible.
So unfortunately, I was not able to speak to the conservation agent today because he wasn't available. I can't answer the question. As I said to Selectman Reyes earlier, many times when our boards and committees request to place something on the warrant, we place it on the warrant, and then they have to argue the case. And if they make a poor argument, it's not well thought or well founded, then obviously it fails.
Yeah, so a storm water management system doesn't necessarily mean the ones that you see in the street. A lot of the times it's the retention ponds or something along those lines in someone's personal backyard that they build when they build their house.
It could be that. It could be both commercial or residential. I had used the example when I spoke to Denise earlier in reference to Market Basket. Entities cannot allow the runoff of their water into a public road, for example.
Yep.
But either can residents. And
Or into a neighbor.
And so the reality is we have inspectors. The building inspector goes out and he makes sure that you are compliant. And so does our stormwater agent, which is our conservation agent. And from what I'm inferring from this request is that although he may find somebody non-compliant, he doesn't have the ability to be able to have any teeth to force the issue. That's what I'm inferring. I've not talked to him about it. Understand something, because East Bridgewater is going through this now. We are all required under the EPA to be compliant. So if the EPA finds out that a resident, just as an example, is non-compliant and the town doesn't do anything, the town also becomes liable and culpable. So that probably is a reason as to why John and the Conservation Commission is requiring this. But again, I've not spoken to him. I'm just inferring based on my years of experience.
Okay, so now if there's no other further discussion on placing these on the warrant, I'll entertain a motion to either place them or unless you have, either of you have anything else that you want to discuss.
No.
Okay, and for the Finance Committee, as David had recommended, that we take that one off of the warrant. I do think we need to reform those articles, but I'm fine with waiting until a later date.
Okay,
All right, so is there a motion?
I give a motion.
Is there a second?
Just to be clear, we're placing them on the agenda as written, or they're going to be,
Well, subject to town council review.
okay, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and now we can go back to Article 35, I believe. So I think some of the language things we should leave for council. I mean, some of the minor ones. So I think the only substantive ones are probably the 1,000 feet. I personally am fine with adding recreational establishment and/or restaurant to 7.9.5.7 to add clarification. The 1,000 feet, I personally don't like how it's inconsistent with medical. I'm not sure that there'll be that much of a difference in traffic, or, I don't know. David, I didn't ask you this beforehand, but do you happen to know how much that would limit the area that could potentially be zoned for these?
So
Would it at all, or would it?
Yeah, so I haven't looked at a map. I will tell you that I brought this concern to the chairman of the planning board. Again, he has been around a long time. He's concerned because you cannot use zoning in a backwards attempt to almost make sure that nobody can actually license a facility in town. And because we've already severely restricted this to a small part of town of the industrial area, and then you add an additional 1,000 feet as opposed to 500 feet, his concern is that it probably wouldn't pass legal muster, or certainly wouldn't pass under a challenge. Obviously, it would also have to pass the Attorney General's office. Hugh has advised me that 500 feet is a well-established practice for these setback requirements, and feels that because it's been well-established and it has always passed the muster of the Attorney General's office, that we should remain consistent with that. But that doesn't mean that you can't pass along those comments if you'd be in favor of it. The planning board will make the ultimate decision as to what they approve. Again, they'll be in touch with legal counsel, but they'll make the ultimate decision as to what they're going to want to bring to town meeting.
I think what Denise is trying to convey to you, where it is, that location, we don't have any problem, I don't have any problem with that. But if it moves to another location, or say we put the recreation, then it means something, because we don't know where it's gonna go. 1,000 feet.
Well, no, it would still have, no matter what, it has to be in that industrial area.
Right.
There's no getting around that.
Yeah, but there's
Assuming that this is-
industrial areas that are built up with residential too,
Well,
you know?
Schools have a drug-free zone. Where do they put those signs up? How many feet from a school?
500 feet?
I don't know, but I do know that this would require 500 feet at a minimum to a school, but I don't know about those signs.
Because I mean, this might be state, but it's still not federal.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
have drug-free zones around schools.
Right.
I mean, if they're 1,000 feet, it almost seemed like our bylaw would violate a drug-free school zone. If let's say it's 1,000 feet for a drug-free school zone, and we're saying 500 is okay.
Right.
I mean, the planning board reviewing it with town council sounds reasonable, and it's not an attempt to make a zoning bylaw that makes it impossible for one of these establishments to move into the area. I'm just thinking about the sensitivity that we need to show to the residents and schools and children.
Okay,
That's all.
I can get along with that, that's fine.
Can I ask a question? Am I out of order?
You're out of order, but that's fine.
Can I just say, what I see here, it's a big discussion. I've been in many town meetings like yourselves. What time's it gonna go on at night? I'd say table it, go to a regular meeting, and go to a special meeting, which you usually have following after. I don't know if the law says you have to do this at town meeting, because for what I'm hearing here, there's a lot of good questions here. There's not a good lot of answers here. 1,000 feet, 500 feet, business zone, you have a business zone right in a residential. Could they put it there? Dot your i's, capitalize your t's. I say table it to the special meeting that follows after the town meeting. Suggestion, because it's a big article, a lot of people are talking about it. You can have a lot of people there out of town that don't live in the town, that have a right to come to town meeting and speak on it. My opinion, you do what you want, you are the selectman.
I appreciate the feedback, Neil. Are we going to have a special town meeting this year?
I don't know, at this point, I do not have any articles for special town meeting, and I am making, I mean, obviously, if somebody wants to place an article, they have the right to do it. As I said earlier, we usually do our snow and ice deficit on the special, and I incorporate into the annual, because unfortunately, when we have to elect a town moderator, we are going to have to elect one for a special as well if we hold it. So that creates a whole nother nuance. So I'm attempting not to have a special, but if we have to, we will.
Don't we have a deadline to have this in place by June 30th?
Yes,
So we would literally have to have a town meeting on June 4th and then a special town meeting
yes,
before June 30th?
yes.
I'm not saying that long, I mean, I thought it would be like, actually, if I'm in order,
Yeah, go ahead.
but like, say if it went like September, beyond like we usually have after the time, if there's a deadline, I'm saying if you're gonna push it down, just make sure all your i's are dotted and the t's are crossed. There's a lot of questions here, a lot of good points are being brought up. Thank you, Denise, and, all you, whatever.
I agree with you, Neil. It is a lot, but with that looming deadline over us, that if we don't do something, we're open to everything.
Yeah, we are. Okay. So I'm fine with the recommendation for 1,000. That would be then up to the planning board on what they decide on, along with the one above that. Are there any other recommendations that you'd like us to consider from this to send along to the planning board?
Well, excuse me, again, I think it's beneficial if we're going to include cultivation, packaging, and retail, we should include research facility.
Okay.
And that's scientific.
I have absolutely no issue with that.
And again, at the telephone number, email addresses, other means to contact someone via, versus just a name and address. And more defined information on any legal organizations that might apply for a license or permit, other than just, I'm ABC LLC from whatever state, and then not being able to drill down to an individual that has responsibility for the organization in some form.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to pass along all of Denise's recommendations with the exception of the hours one, because we found that can't be done, to the planning board and town council to review. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And, Mr. Chairman, if I may, one thing to let Neil know is that because the original article is going to also, we have the ability to be able to ban marijuana, 62% at our most recent election voted to ban it. So if it bans it, this goes away. This doesn't even come before town.
This is really a just in case.
Trust me, we've spent 5 days working on this, and it may very well not even turn out to be a reality.
Okay.
I'd just like to say something here. You know, what's going on out in the street, and of course, I'm all ears, and if somebody's got something bothers somebody, I'll bring it in. Medical marijuana, which we have now. And I asked David to look up and see if we put any stipulations on it as it is down there now. And he looked it up and he got back to me today, and there's no stipulation. Now, I don't know if another board put stipulations or what it is, but there's 3 stipulations that, I'm gonna get back to the individual that he claims that we're not using business fair in his town. But David, we're gonna follow up on it. Dave gave me the paper tonight, he said, there's no stipulations that the board put on it. So if they come in from some other boards, or I don't know, on the present marijuana places down there, but a medical marijuana,
No stipulations. We put on. The planning.
Oh, he says, but other boards could put the stipulations on, not necessarily, us,
Okay.
All right.
Moving on, the Samoset Rod and Gun Club has requested a special permit for its annual parking lot party on May 27th.
And
I wish
just,
to abstain from that one.
and just so you're aware, we actually received ABCC approval today on what you voted on a couple
Okay.
of weeks ago.
Thank you.
So you can skip past this, no action is required.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, list of proposed FY19 appointments. So this is just a list that we'll take under advisement. It's primarily the current members of the boards that we appoint. So we'll put that on the agenda next week to vote on.
Mhm.
Memorial Day ceremony will be May 28th, and are there 3 activities that the board does?
Yeah, we have that ceremony as a pack, okay? And generally, we ask, one of the members, generally the chairman will give the main address, and then the welcome. I'll volunteer for the welcome. And what happens there is the third member reads a roster of the veterans who are deceased and places a wreath. Okay, that's how it's done. And the list would go into the town clerk, and then she sets up, whoever, clergy just got to be there, and this is how we usually do it. And I know if that's how you want to do it, then usually the chair does the main, if you would accept that. And I would take care of the running as far as the welcome of the thing, that's how we do. And then Chris sets up the things, for the speakers and that, and we get together at 10 o'clock at the pack.
Okay.
So that information has got to be transcribed yet to the town clerk.
Denise, are you
Are you
good with
that?
reading the names and placing the wreath?
I am.
Assuming that you'll be in attendance?
Assuming I will be in attendance, absolutely.
Okay.
I thought I had my calendar with me, but I'm not sure.
Well, one time, we didn't have any vote, and I ended up with having to do it all. Boy, I don't want to do that again.
That was before my time.
It does happen, though, people get sick, and, come on.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have town meeting educational video. Denise, you had asked that this be placed.
This was something I spoke with Jim Benson about at the debate, and he wanted to wait to see who was elected first. But he liked the idea of doing it, and the plan was to do an informational type of video for the residents to explain the whole process with town meeting. What the proper process is if you want to talk on the floor, if you want to object to a budget, if you want to discuss a budget, if you want to amend a budget. I know it all follows Robert's Rules of Order, but it's not something I'm really familiar with, and I don't think most of our residents are, or many of our residents are. And if they at least understood the process a little better, maybe they would feel more comfortable participating in town meeting.
Well, Neil's got the most educated standing up there, so he probably wrote the book.
I was going to ask Neil to help me. I was going to ask Neil to help do the video.
Okay, Neil?
It's called our meeting time. Our meeting time is Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did run for moderator. Unfortunately, they voted me down again.
So, yeah, I was wondering if Anthony and Eldon, if you
I
wanted
would
to participate in
Absolutely
it?
be glad to help.
Yeah,
Eldon?
yeah, well,
So
Help.
Ben is willing and to do it. I'll get in touch with him and set up some times.
My only concern is who's gonna be the expert on, I would by no means consider myself an expert on the actual rules. Unfortunately, the expert passed recently. So my concern is how are we gonna get the right and the accurate information together?
Well, we need to find an expert or someone who has a good general understanding of it.
Town lawyer.
And, quite frankly, we've all been to town meeting. I don't think we follow it 100%. We do our very best, but I wouldn't say we follow it 100%. So we do need someone who's knowledgeable that can help us through this. David, do you have any suggestions?
The person that is the best parliamentarian person that I know happens to be our legal counsel, and obviously he can participate, but when you'd have to coordinate a schedule, and two, obviously, he's got charges for the time. I don't know who else you would want to use in town. We can reach out to a handful of people. We have a couple of people who have been past moderators, So I can certainly reach out to them. I have no problem with that.
Looks like you can reach out to Neil.
Colin Turner would be a good guy. If he's not, I don't know, am I out of order?
No, go ahead, go ahead now.
Denise, in two things, when you run a town meeting, like a parliamentarian, you run a meeting, because a lot of people don't understand it, so you try to keep it going in this fashion, but Warrant attorney is very good, legal counsel, if you want to bring him in, spend a few bucks, how many people are gonna come, but you're right, a lot of people are more or less scared to speak in front of a mic, public speaking, this is two different things, yeah, but, and I learned mine from going to town meeting for 30 years,
And, you know,
I'm still out of order.
all due respect to town council, but I wasn't looking for it to cost the town any money. So
Yeah.
if we could do it with residents, that would be great.
Okay, so next steps, I guess. Denise, would you like to be in charge of contacting a couple of volunteers?
Sure.
Potential volunteers?
Reach out to Warren Turner. Consider yourself reached out to.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Is there anything else on that?
Chairman Kinahan, if I might, if we could go back to the Memorial Day commemorative service for a moment, I'm not sure we, got all of the things filled that need to be filled.
Okay.
Just, if you could just take a formal vote as to who's going to do what, please.
Oh, we need to vote on that?
And it's these four, so there's the welcome, the address, the
Okay.
reading of the honor roll, and the wreath laying.
I did have my calendar, Anthony. I'm out of state that weekend.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's why that you weren't included on it.
Nope, nope,
That's
that's last year.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so do you want to switch? That's what we did last year. You want to make it the opposite, Eldon?
I don't care, you know?
All right, I'll
Whatever, you know?
entertain a motion to do the opposite of what was done last year.
Explain that out, will you?
So last year, you did the welcome and the wreath laying. I did the address and the reading of the honor roll. So we can switch it, or we can do the same. I'm fine with either.
I don't know how we did that, because it usually goes to the chair, you know? I don't know why that was changed, but it
I don't
doesn't
know.
matter, you know, whatever you...
Yeah, the chair wasn't available last year. That's why it was only the two of you.
Okay. But I just gave you what usually the chair takes it, the address and all that. I'd rather stay with that.
Okay, that's fine. I'll make a motion that we keep the same that was done last year.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Anything else you want to know about?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Tracy. Okay, approval of the list of election workers. I believe Annie has submitted a list to us. I have no objections. Is there a motion to approve this submitted list?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Okay, Boston Post Kane update.
This is just an update to the board that unfortunately the person who was the recipient has passed away, and the Historical Commission is working on reaching out to the next person, and once they do, we'll be back in touch with you so we can hold the ceremony as we normally do.
Okay, thank you, David. Appointment to Plymouth County Advisory Board. For the past 2 years, I have been the delegate. It's typically the newest member of the board who takes it, so if Denise, if you would like, we would gladly appoint you to the Plymouth County Advisory Board.
I'll accept that, and I'm already scheduled to go to their May 31st meeting, I believe.
Maybe you should, the county commissioner out there, right, and then she's out there in the audience.
Oh.
And I think you've already talked to her, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion, if Denise will accept it. That she will be appointed to the advisory board of Plymouth County.
I'll second.
All in favor?
And that doesn't go with a hotel room either, you know, because you... Okay,
I understand.
That's done in Plymouth, you might have to.
yeah, right.
Okay. Anything else on that? No. Okay, yard sale. Waiver restrictions.
Question
David,
vote.
explain that yard sale, is it Tracy?
Yep, so The Eclectic Collection is looking to have 2 days of yard sales. Currently, there is a restriction on their license for outdoor displays. They have spoken with the building department, who is approving this from their perspective, as long as the board votes tonight to waive that outdoor display requirement for purposes of just these 2 days.
Okay, are there any concerns with that?
Or any problem with
Can
that?
I make a comment on
Make a motion to that effect?
Go ahead.
Oh.
it? I'm Howard Dempsey. It's basically Howard Dempsey owning the property, having a friends and family yard sale. I don't know how Eclectic Collection got involved with it, and outside display, I'm not sure how that got involved with it. I believe we had one last year. Someone complained to the boards about it being that way, and therefore we had to get a permit last year. I don't quite understand the whole procedure. I know there are many other businesses in town that have outdoor displays all the time, and I don't believe, whether they be antique or whether they be whatever, they have outdoor displays all the time, and I'm sure they don't have outdoor permits. So,
So, okay, so there was some confusion. My understanding was that it was being done, because it was on the premises, it was being done for your business, and
No.
your business license has that restriction,
right.
which is where that came from.
Right, it's being done, and you never got back to me on that to discuss it, so.
I actually
therefore-
left you a voicemail, but, so there was just, we just
Right,
miscommunicated.
and I gave you a voicemail back too. But anyway, it is the idea that it is nothing to do with the Eclectic Collection. It happens to be in my business's parking lot. So,
So what I would recommend is this, because this came from the building inspector, he's the zoning enforcement officer, and this was his interpretation. So what I would ask is that if the board could take the vote to provide a waiver, we'll provide the information to the building inspector. If a waiver is needed, it's great. If a waiver is not needed, then no harm, no foul.
Okay, thank you, David. Is there a motion to that
So
effect?
moved to that effect.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did we skip the Boston and Kane?
No, we went over that.
Well, no,
Yeah.
you heard that, you.
You sleeping?
Yeah.
I'll reach back out to you after.
That's-
Um,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I speak out of order, please?
Of course.
Since everybody's doing it.
Whoa, everybody's doing that.
Neil started it.
A new trend.
Whoa.
I know. Welcome to the town of West Bridgewater, right? I just wanted to say thank you very much, Anthony, for being our advisory board appointee, and thank you for Denise. I, greatly appreciate you stepping up and being the new advisory board appointee. I would like to mention one thing to you people, not that I'm on the agenda, is that this is tick season, and we want you all to be very aware that, ticks are very dangerous and they cause great illnesses. We do have an epidemiologist that we would love to have come out and present to you at some point.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. And hopefully Denise will attend more meetings than I had. Okay, request to participate in the October 2018 promotional exam for the police department. David, is there a retirement in the foreseeable future, or is this just,
This is just to cover our basis because we don't have any available list at this point, and the list is good for 2 years. So if we allow somebody to be able to test for in October, it will be certified in the spring, and then it'll be good for 2 years from there. And that way it just gives the police flexibility in case one does arise.
okay, thank you.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have carryover vacation time for Chris Iannitelli. He was unable to use a handful of days, I believe it's 4 days, that he's requested to carry over to the next year. Is there a motion to approve that?
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, is there any correspondence from the public to determine a course of action? Or is there anyone that would like to speak for a public comment period? Neil?
I got 3 quick ones, without quick answers. The articles that we put on for free cash, whatever, like we spoken earlier, if you sit there and say, free cash, how much is in it, and what will become after if it's approved by the town. And the building inspector, in the past, there's so much going on in this town, I don't know how one man could do all that work by himself. He comes up here and asks for help, not saying he has, I talk to him, I see the work going on. One man can't do what's going on. With all this new construction going on, he might need a second pair of eyes to go over and see what's going. Because the house across the street from me, I talked to the people at the house, how you doing? They're flooded, not his problem, that's a major. But he needs a second hand, in my opinion. Because when we did it before, I forget if the building inspector that was fired or whatever, we replaced them, and he re-put one on temporarily to help him during the storm. It's only gonna get bigger, and one guy can't do the job. Absolutely not.
The answer to you, I talked to him this week, and he's fine what he's doing. And, but he needs, secretary help in there. He needs somebody else in there. That's what he's asking for.
That's what he's at, that's up to
Yeah,
you.
that's what he has conveyed that to me.
And that'd be money well spent. If that's what they need, that's what they need. This town's growing leaps and bounds, and it's gonna
And
continue.
we have some money that office, as you notice, this is beautiful in here. That office needs some work, and he needs to, so it'll function the way he wants it over there. But you know, the area of all the thing, now everybody thinks, like you just mentioned, we're busier. When Steve Solari was here, okay, David shows me the figures yesterday. And we were doing as much as we're doing now. And as I look around, and in fact, this week, the Chadwick's building, the Travelers Insurance is allocated, taking 2 floors over there. So, you know, I know he's busy, but in other words, the figures that he gave me, and then when I talked to him, you know, like you said, he's very, very busy. But the money that's coming in and everything else doesn't reflect it, right, David? You showed me the list. So, but I'm not saying he's not busy either, because he's got all he can do. And I think he's a good inspector as far as inspections. He might be other areas maybe, but I think he's, as far as what I hear, you know, hint to lock with the builders, they have no complaints with him, you know.
That's fine, it's up to them. One last thing,
Yeah.
PowerPoint. We go to the PowerPoint now. When we buy these articles, we gotta buy the police car, whatever, they should be on a PowerPoint, show what we're buying. There shouldn't be no
Right.
reason, this is the thing of the past, read and past. I always push that, I push it other places too.
Yeah, right.
But I'm just saying, so they can see what they're gonna buy. You're gonna get rid of this car, to replace it with this car.
Right.
That should be the future going down the road. But whatever you do, but I'm gonna, if it ain't up there, I'm gonna just ask why,
Well,
and if
but
not,
you
I'll
would-
table it.
You mean you've never seen the backseat of a police car?
No, they-
How did they get away with all these years? Huh?
Okay, to answer your first question, I believe free cash is gonna be about 450,000 that we had available for these projects, is that right? Or am I wrong?
We had 779,000, 350,000 will go to school debt, and the rest is going to go to capital budget items.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else from the public? Nope, okay, town administrator's report.
Excuse me. I did have a couple questions, but I don't know if I'm part of the public or it's regarding to some procedures for us,
Sure.
this envelope, so I didn't know if
Absolutely.
now was the proper time to ask. Yes, no, maybe?
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
yes, all right. A couple weeks ago, when I was handed this envelope of bills to sign, I only had a cover sheet with a dollar amount on it. I didn't have all of these invoices that went with it. So I did sign it, but there were no details. I forget how much it was for. I want to say about $1 million. So it would be helpful if, going forward, we always have this with it.
So the summary sheet, or there's, I mean, it's all in
So-
here.
Well, last week, all I got was this yellow
I
envelope
told you it was,
and a sheet on top.
It's all, did you open the envelope?
No, it was just passed down to me with the sheet on top that
it means
everyone
sometimes
signed.
there's just one odd sheet that comes out here.
Yeah, well, it didn't have this. It didn't even have this. It was a piece of paper, I believe.
I have no idea.
Lines.
I mean, the town accountant handles it, Denise, so.
Okay.
Had I known, I would have done
So-
the homework. I just didn't know.
Well, it was my first meeting, so I was a little thrown off. But if maybe, I would like to, at the next meeting, see the detail for whatever it was we signed at my first meeting. It was, I think, $989,000, something around there. And then I did have a few questions. And I don't mean to be anal, but I looked at it this time. And I noticed there's gasoline charges, and it just says town and school accounts. If the buses, I'm assuming the gas is covered under the contract with Lucini, so I don't know why the schools are paying for gasoline as well. That's what at least this page shows. It's page 10, David, so if you want to look at it later, I'll just tell you what page they are. And on page 24, excuse me, on the school payroll, there's a lump sum of $43,000, and it just says professional salaries. So it doesn't, the other lines designate who the salary is, whether it's a resource teacher or whomever. This just says professional salaries, $43,000, and it just stood out because it was a sizable amount, especially when it's for, what is it, a month?
2 weeks, I believe.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. So, that other category always bothers me when it's a sizable number, but you don't know what other is.
Okay,
Okay.
I think maybe if you want to talk to David offline about those issues and see if they can be resolved.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, David.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Per your policy, I signed off on the use of town roads for 2 different events. They're in front of you on your agenda. One is for the school, and one is for the Open Space Committee. I also placed on the agenda, with the unfortunate passing of our moderator, I want to make sure that everybody understood what the process will be. As Selectman Ray said earlier, unfortunately, town meeting can be a little bit difficult to follow for people who don't go all the time. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood what we need to do. You'll recall that our first agenda item on the warrant was to elect a town moderator. According to our article about our bylaw, our town clerk will preside over the meeting. She will open the meeting. She will then call for an election for moderator. Assuming somebody gets nominated and seconded, and assuming that there is only one person, she will have the ability to be able to ask for a ballot vote that she can cast on her own on behalf of that person. If there is multiple people that are nominated, then there will be an election, but it must be a ballot election. It cannot be a voice vote. If there is nobody that can actually take the place as moderator because they're unwilling to and we cannot nominate anyone, then the town clerk by default becomes the moderator. And unfortunately, you then have to elect on the floor somebody to be the acting town clerk. It would follow a similar process. Because we only have one person that works in the town clerk's office and she's a resident in town, hopefully that is the person that would get elected. Hopefully we don't have to go that route. The hope is that we will have a person that will be nominated and be elected. Please note that that person's responsibilities as moderator is only for that evening. They do not carry forward the powers of the moderator post that meeting. In inclusive, they do not include the powers of moderator if we have a special town meeting that same night either. If we end up having a special town meeting, you will follow the exact same process for that meeting as well.
So what you're following the chapter of the state laws, or chapter, I think, 39, section 2. That's what's been handed to me all over. There's a bunch of people in there, I just don't think we do a good job. They handed me chapters and everything else, and you'd already handed that to me, so I told them, I said, what are you talking about? Chapter 39? I said, that's what we're following.
Yep, so we'll follow our local bylaws in Mass General Law, but that will be the process, so I just wanted to make sure that the public is aware for who watches this and also the board as well.
So we're following the law.
Last item on the agenda is a list of open lawsuits. I've provided you the list. As you know, that at last meeting on April 18th, the board requested I provide an update. We have 5 current lawsuits that we are currently engaged in. I've listed them. There is one imminent potential litigation that we are going to go into executive session and discuss tonight with our legal counsel. And currently there are 3 open appellate tax board cases with the Board of Assessors that are incurring legal costs. That That doesn't mean that those are the only ones that have filed for an abatement and that the assessors are working on, but so far, those other ones have not incurred legal expenses. And the last one is a resident in town suing the town of West Bridgewater's water department. That is the list of open lawsuits.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
See, this is what's sad about, you know, even if they're guilty, they're always looking for something there, and it ends up there. This is where I have a big problem with. I mean, if you're guilty, you're guilty, you shouldn't get anything.
Well, they're innocent until proven guilty.
Wow, they're pretty well proven guilty when they go through, I'll tell you.
We're actually the
They-
defendant in
but they
all of
still-
them, so.
They still get
Um,
something out of it, you know, to settle the things, you know? And then that's what the insurance company kicks in, and they'll only pay a certain amount. And if we come into an agreement or something like that, and we decide to go further, now it's all on the town side. Okay, so we're more or less sort of coached into something like that. That's the part of the job I don't care for.
I think it's unfortunate, Eldon, when it happens, when the town is being sued, but a resident, an employee, or whomever that feels they were wronged and has a
Well, they got rights,
basis,
yeah.
they have rights.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
Yeah, but I know against that. But it's the thing there where the end results there, you know, the town ends up where, whether we think they're, or, you know, we go through the proper channel, we go to court and all things with all this stuff, so. But that's
Okay.
where,
All right, I'll entertain a motion to enter into executive session, not to return to open session, to discuss strategy with respect to potential litigation, specifically Peterson Puritan Incorporated, Superfund site, Cumberland, Rhode Island, versus Town of West Bridgewater. Since my opinion as chair, strategizing in open session would have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the town. And this requires a roll call vote.
Maria, yes.
second? Ray's second?
No,
yes.
Ray.
Yes. What do I
Kennahan,
say?
yes. Meeting is adjourned, and now we'll be entering into executive